Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Carrie Biedner, and I am the director here at Ashwood Fertility Care Center. We are so excited for our first ever book club author Q&A. Those of you who have been joining us through the book club, reading The Happy Girl's Guide to Being Whole, got it right here, authored by Teresa Kenney. We are so excited to have Teresa here with us tonight to answer your questions. I'm going to bring her to the stage here in a moment, but I just want you to know that we have a chat box here to communicate with us. We also have a ask a question button at the bottom. There's already 4 questions there. You can feel free to add your questions in, and you can even vote for questions that you want to see answered. But I think we'll have plenty of time to answer all the questions that you have tonight. Hopefully we'll have a good group joining us live tonight. If not, you can definitely catch the replay as well and share this with your friends. As you can see here on Crowdcast, we have several replays from our holistic women's health webinars that the different fertility care practitioners here at Ashwood have been able to present for you. And we are so excited again to have Teresa Kenney here with us tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her to the stage, and we can get her introduced to you. Teresa is one of our 4 NAPRO medical consultants here at Ashwood Fertility Care Center, and we have many of our clients see her for their NAPRO technology care. So she'll get a little invite here in a minute, I think, to come to the stage. It's asking me, are you sure? Yes, I do. There she is. Hello.
Hey, good to see you, Carrie.
Yes, good evening. How are you tonight?
I'm great. It feels dark. It's getting so dark. I'm like, my room feels dark, but I'm so happy to be with you. And thanks so much for putting on this event. It's really awesome.
Yes, I enjoyed reading through your book, and it was really fun to do with a group of women. On our Ashwood Fertility Care app, we had I did some video feedback on the different chapters, and we had some communication going on. So it's been a really great time. We had about 40 women involved, so it's been great. And so I'm excited to ask you some of the questions tonight that they have as well. But Teresa, would you first go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us a little bit about your history, professional background, and such. And one of the questions was, what finally inspired you to write this book?
Thank you so much. Yeah. I am from Omaha, Nebraska. I'm a women's health nurse practitioner. That's what the WHNP stands for. And I've been in practice for about 23 years now. So I graduated as an NP in 2000. What else can I tell you? I'm married. I have 8 children. My husband, Dan, and I reside in Omaha. Do you hear a feedback, Carrie?
Mine's fine. It sounds
Okay.
like Elizabeth sees a little bit of feedback. It might be hearing through
Like
the
I'm hearing
microphone.
myself kind of double.
Okay, I'm going to see if I might be able to fix that with some AirPods, but you can keep going.
Okay. But just as long as I mean, I can handle it if it's not what you guys
Yeah,
hear, but
it's
I hear
not
double.
bothering me, but we'll see if we can make this better. Okay,
Yeah,
keep
so
going.
I'm just passionate about women's health, and I know the first time I met you, Carrie, it was at I think it was one of the first ever like pro women's healthcare kind of events. So what's amazing about being passionate in women's health is that when you get to meet women like you, Carrie, and people across the country, is I realize I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who feels this way. When I was in nurse practitioner school, I remember learning about all these women's health issues and then hearing the same thing being said over and over again. Well, you have this period problem. This is the solution. And it was always the same solution. And I hadn't even wrapped my brain around how something that was used to prevent pregnancy could also be used as like a panacea of medical treatment. And so it got me always thinking about why we did it this way and what were the other alternatives if someone didn't want to take birth control. And I quickly learned that medicine kind of decided that they didn't really want to offer alternatives, that the choice became, no, I'm sorry, this is what we do. And that just never sat well with me. And I think advanced myself another 15 years. And I think society is also feeling that this one for all solution is not what women want. So what inspired me to write the book was, knowing myself as a 20-some-year-old and remembering what I didn't know, remembering that I had PMS and I didn't even know it was PMS, which if you read the book, I gave a little story about that. And I really wanted to focus on kind of that emerging young woman going into college and knowing that the vast majority of those women wouldn't have gotten this education in school. Their mothers probably didn't know it either, and they didn't get that information. And I know mothers are also desperate to kind of have something they can give to their daughters. So I really wanted this to be kind of that, hey, like I didn't learn this, but I want to offer this to you. And I'm hoping, at least it provides, I know it's not everything because you just can't put everything in a book, but just at least a little bit of a foundation to say, your body is good. This is how it works. This is the natural design, and take off from there.
Okay, sorry. So I figured out I need to mute myself each time you're talking. So
Got
like
it.
through
I,
this,
I heard it. Yeah,
for
but
some reason, I couldn't hear half of the things, but I understand your inspiration for this book, and I'm so glad. I have to say that when I first started the book club, I was over at Northwestern College here in Orange City, and they were having their welcome to the community time, and I had your book out there, and I just flipped through it, and they're like, "Oh, it's beautiful." And I was selling them to these girls for $10 because they just need to have it. And it was just really neat. And I know some of them were involved reading it. And I've been challenging all of these girls too. Once you're done reading it, share it with a friend. We need to get this information in their hands. I know you're probably aware too. We got an email recently from the American Academy of Fertility Care Professionals that there could be the possibility that the birth control pill could be over the counter. And I know in some states, actually, it is right now, too. And so I think your book is so timely in the fact that women really need to know about how their bodies work before thinking, oh, I can just go grab this medication off the shelf that's going to dramatically change my health, right? And of course, everyone, we are so thankful to Teresa too for her Hormone Genius podcast. You're in the season 3 now, is that correct?
yeah,
Yeah, and that's just been amazing. And we love how you have integrated that into your book as well, pointing us towards the certain episodes. I know that here at Ashwood, we send people to certain episodes of the Hormone Genius podcast all the time. And it's just been a really, really great resource for us. Let me look at our questions here at the bottom and ask you the next one. Along with the podcast that you have, Elizabeth asked, what apps or websites do you use to help you live personally a holistic life?
It's a good question. I pretty much soak up my extra time with learning more. So I don't know if this pertains exactly. I mean, it is how I learn how to live a holistic life, but sometimes it's more me wanting to learn more so I can give that to people in the podcast too. So my favorite people are Peter Attia. Peter Attia is this is kind of outside the box a little bit of women's health, but he's a doctor who specializes in longevity. I am fascinated by the fact that he's so well researched and so well read. So I follow him. From a women's health perspective, I follow and read Anna Cabeca, Lara Bryden, Jolene Brighton. Some of these might sound familiar to you. There's Sarah Gottfried. These are all like women in the kind of holistic women's health area that are definitely well researched, very educated doctors. I mean, I have a lot more. I listen to a lot of functional medicine stuff. Just even, and I tell you, this is kind of a little fun thing is, I don't know if whoever's on Instagram, and I'm not, I am on my social media. I try to be on, but I really don't follow Instagram a lot. But my daughter, who's in college, she's a senior nursing student and Benedictine. When I first started the podcast, she said, "Mom, you got to follow these girls. They're called the Balance Bears. I don't know if you have heard of them, Carrie, but they were just in People magazine, and as you know, because they have built this kind of holistic women's health. It's they're not doctors. They're just three sisters, and they're so good at social media, and they put out all of this content related to your periods and understanding your cycle and how to live a holistic life. And like I said, they have become so big that they got People magazine just in this last couple weeks.
Yes, I saw the article in People magazine, but I haven't looked on Instagram for them. So Balanced Bears, you're saying is what they're called. I'm gonna
Yep.
check that out. Yeah, I put it in the comments here too.
Yeah. Very much way cooler than I am. Let's put it that way.
You're
Like,
very
I'm like,
cool.
if I was really cool, I'd want to be like them.
Yes. So these three sisters, that is pretty neat. I read part of the article in People magazine. I just think that's just the fact that it's in People magazine and young people wanting to know more about their bodies. Like, I mean, this is really what we're seeing, like this kind of change. That kind of goes into a question that I had on here. Um, how do you see women's healthcare changing in the next 10 years? What are your thoughts, hopes, and
Mhm.
devastations?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I sometimes I go to a place of negative pessimism, and then sometimes I go to the happy, positive place. I can be in both spaces, but from a positive standpoint, and I say this on my podcast a lot, I think the healthcare situation is driven by the market. Money drives everything. So from a good place, from a positive direction, we have the power. You have the power when you are desiring the service that is getting, you're paying for basically. So if women continue to say, I deserve better, if you don't give me the quality care that I think I deserve, I will move on. Healthcare will be forced to meet the patient where they're at, or they lose the patient. So I see that as a good thing. Now, from a negative standpoint, I still think research will largely be oriented towards drugs. And unfortunately, the whole hormonal birth control world in women's health, that's still largely probably going to be the focus of research. But we also know that there is this huge femtech explosion. So that's probably where most of us would love to kind of see that grow and really be data oriented and research focused. Because here's the deal: all of these strips, the new ones, I think it's called Anito, the Mira, all of these new products out there, they're awesome. But if they aren't formally researched, probably in a sense to avoid pregnancy, they're not going to be taken seriously in the big conventional world, right? Because if we want to stand up and say, yes, we want this, then there's going to have to be data to say this works to avoid pregnancy as well. Even though we know it doesn't really matter if a woman wants to use it for her health or for family planning, that's her choice. It still would be great for these companies to do some big studies to show that it will work for that, because it will. It just, and that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, I am too. And I just think every time there's another thing that comes up that might be like devastating or depressing about what's happening in women's health, I'm like, well, we get to just continue to do what we're doing, right? Nothing that we're doing is going to change. We just need to continue to educate and continue to move it out there. And I think the Happy Girls Guide is definitely a big step forward in especially that population that you wanted to target with this book. Because those are the girls that are making those decisions for their life. If they were put on the birth control pill as teenagers, they're starting to realize, oh, I had now have a say in this, and I can get off of this because I can actually research and have information for myself. So that they aren't in my office 15 years later trying to have babies and they're realizing they can't
Right.
And I'm like, well, how long were you on the pill? They're like, 15 years. How many cycles did you have before you went on the pill? Like, two.
Yeah.
And isn't it heartbreaking? I mean, I know you have this in your office every day,
Mhm.
but it's like, man. And then I just think about that mother that
Mhm.
was probably just wanted to help her daughter and didn't know that there was any other way.
Right.
So, I of course that I'm a part of the Cycle Show and doing that twofold education where we're educating the adult parents and the young girls at the same time. And yeah, as we just continue to have these resources and more education, the better, right? And of course, what we're doing at Lumen Press with Leah Jacobson's book, Holistic Feminism for Adult Women, basically, your book there for the younger adult women. And then we're going to republish What's Going On in My Body by Dr. Elizabeth Reith Paula under Lumen Press
Oh,
in the
great.
very near future because there's only 100 copies left in Germany and we're not
Wow.
shipping it over to the US anymore. So we're going to do an update with American English and we'll have that full spectrum available, which will be wonderful. Um, there was another question on here, and then I had some questions specifically about the book. But my friend Jen asked, what are your thoughts and what is your experience with women waiting until their mid to late 30s to have kids? Do you think this trend will ever revert back to the majority of women having children in their early to mid 20s?
Mhm. Yeah, what a great question.
Mm-hmm.
I read that before we got started, and I thought I have to ponder this for a little moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do see that it could change, and here's where I think it changed for the bad when we went through feminism, because it took us, and I like to use the word, it untethered us from our own fertility. So, birth control and this idea that you can just fully suppress a woman's cycle and her fertility, it basically disintegrates us from the reality of who we are as procreative human beings. And I think in some way we don't even realize it's happening. But society has told us that the choice to be fertile is just dependent on a choice, right? Not that you are created a certain way and it's inherent to how your biology works on a daily basis. We're disintegrated from that now because we've been told that reproduction is a constant choice every day, right? And the reality of that is that it's not true, that our bodies were designed this way. And I think that as we integrate, and this is what makes me so excited about, all of this great movement in this area, is that it reintegrates us into who we are as women, into who we are as procreative human beings, both male and female. And as we start to realize, oh, this is how I was made, this is how we are designed, that procreation is a good, family is a good. In fact, it's so good, it is the building block of all society and economy. This isn't just people having families, this is the building blocks of all society and how we flourish as human people. Then I do think I see a trend towards people desiring family earlier. We are not there yet, uh, but I see that as we continue to, again, start to acknowledge the fact that our bodies are good the way they are, I can live without these suppressive hormones. I think this will change.
I totally agree with you. And especially now that like this holistic feminism movement is growing to realizing that women can have careers and be mothers at the same time. You're an amazing example of that. Please share how many children you have and because a lot of people might not know.
Yeah, yeah. I have 8,
Yes.
and
And your
I
husband is an at home author, right?
yeah
And
we
several of the babies he
yes,
raised.
he took care of, yeah, baby stayed at home. I stayed at home and worked part time for many years. Yes, you can make so many things work when you believe that it's possible to do so. And
Mhm.
we deserve to let women know that they can.
Yes, absolutely, for sure. So again, I enjoyed this book so much, but I was wondering which chapter was most fun, or did you enjoy the most writing?
Mhm. Well, I don't think I could point to a chapter. The, the most fun for me to write are the little case stories.
Mm-hmm.
because those are real things, real tangible people. And I hope that when a young woman reads those stories, they may see themselves and they may say, well, what if that's me? And then they're empowered to go to their doctor and say, I read this book and I read that these symptoms could be this.
Mm-hmm.
And would you be willing to look into that for me? So I think the case stories are probably my favorite. And then maybe just a little bits about my own personal story, like playing soccer and having a baby and all that stuff. The more personal is good too.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought the chapter on self care was very excellently written, and I loved what you had to say about the sound of how loud our music is. And I know this is like a funny technical question, but like what's a way to know what the sound level is that you're listening to, like whether it be in your AirPods or whatever? Is there something that you found in that research of how to gauge that?
Okay, so I'm going to clarify that for you, Carrie. So it's not the sound level, it's the frequency of the music. So when we talk about the I think it's 437 hertz, that is what we call a healing frequency. And so
Okay.
it's not the level of like volume,
Uh-oh.
it's the frequency of the music. So for those who want to look this up, it's super cool. So way back when they first started having symphonies and they decided we're going to play all together and we want to play all the same song, we have to tune our instruments, right, to one note in one frequency. And there was one man who, I can't remember his name, but he decided that he would have everybody tune all of their notes to 418 hertz A. So the note A, 418. The problem was is that frequencies were designed by God and they're mathematically perfect. And he took out the frequency or removed it from a perfect mathematical like journey. And so there's this belief that we should be playing and tuning to this other frequency, which is, I think it's again 437 or 434. I can't remember the number. But so it has to do with frequency. And it's considered a healing frequency. So you can go on YouTube and you can look up listening to music in 434 hertz. And it's a healing frequency.
Very interesting. So it
Yeah.
could even be like types of styles that are playing towards that frequency and not
Not even
necessarily.
styles. It's
So
it's
is
it's
it
like
something that you can change in the way that you're listening to it?
yes, I mean, yeah, and essentially, like again, it has to do with if you look at the music part of it, the distinguishable difference would be only to those who are so trained by ear. So you could play the same song, and there'd be this minute, tiny difference in frequency, but the point is that if it was the best frequency, we should be playing it, or if it was the frequency designed by God.
Very interesting. That is so cool. That is
Yeah.
so neat. Oh, it looks like Elizabeth has another question here. If you could go back and give your 20-year-old self some advice, what would you say?
Oh, I mean, I would have given myself everything that was in the book, I would have talked to myself about how my body works. I would have given myself grace to realize that I don't need to be perfect. I would have given myself a lot more information about relationship and what love is and what you're seeking for in your vocation. And when you're first figuring out relationships with the opposite sex, like how to navigate that right and how to see love as something to give to somebody else and not to take from somebody else.
Yes.
There's just so much of that we like stumble through.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly it would be helpful if we would get all this information to try to put it together.
Mm, absolutely. Oh, that's so well said. I'm thinking about even because I was 30 when I got married. And so, even back to that question of like people having children older, yeah, there's so much of our society that goes into it, right? But yeah, thinking about where I was at 20 is going to be very different for those who were maybe like married at 20 and they were doing some very different things. Um, but yeah, I think all of us would say we would have wanted to know how our bodies worked better at that time. Because even if we didn't get anything during the time of puberty, we're still going through just even a massive change just right into adulthood, right? Where we're now making our own health choices. We don't have our parents there to help us with it, and we're um, now listening to what the world is saying about our health. And oh man, there's so many voices today than there were when I was 20 or when you were 20 as well.
Yeah.
So Jennifer says, I just want to say thank you for this book. I wish I had had it 20 years ago. I'm sure you're hearing that over and over again for sure.
Thanks,
Oh,
Jennifer.
yeah, I wish there were more younger women like in this group, but with a lot of us that are a bit like 30s and 40s that were a part of the book study. But it is our goal now to share that with younger women as well. So we will. Those of you that are on live, are there any additional questions that you'd like to ask now? Please go ahead and put those in the chat box. We'd love to see that. Teresa, how has it been? This book was published this summer, right? And you've done quite a few, different signings and tours and things like that. Has there been an interesting comment that you've received that you maybe didn't expect from writing this book that you'd like to share with us?
I've actually been waiting for that, almost like I'm waiting for criticism too.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, I'm
Yeah.
not afraid of criticism.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the book is perfect. I think it could be better.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited that how great it turned out, but I want people's perspective and to see like where they thought maybe I should have said something differently or something should have been added. My hope is that in 2 years we make it better, in 5 years we make it better, and that it just becomes continually something that's such an amazing resource. I haven't had anything crazy come up. I think I'm a little bit sheltered too from that. I'm not sure because it's not on Amazon. You can only get it from Lumen Press. So I think if it were out on Amazon and a bunch of reviews could come in from the public that way, I'd probably see more things, but maybe that's better. I don't know.
Yeah. Will we see it on Amazon soon, or is there?
Supposedly, I think by January it should
Okay.
be on Amazon,
Right.
which will
And
be
are
great.
you going to be doing an audio book, or is that in the plan?
I know Leah, so again, Lumen Press, Leah Jacobson, the Guiding Star Project, she's a editor on the book. She had mentioned an audiobook. So she hasn't mentioned it in a while. I'm happy to do it if that, would be helpful, but
Yeah. I have to say that I have been consuming content audibly over the last couple of years, and that has become my more preferred um, method of consumption. Being a podcaster now, people love your voice, so I know that they would love to have this book in an audio form as well. So just putting my 2 cents in, I would listen to it again. But it was so well done because I'm not a big reader, and I was able to like fly through this book without issues. The way you have it formatted is just really easy to look at, and yeah, it's enticing, and you want to keep going and you want to keep reading it. So well done. Elizabeth says, what book is next?
I know I feel like in this group, people are always asking for the menopause book,
Yes. Yes.
which I just taped an episode on menopause for the podcast, but I have a desire to write a little bit younger version of this book and a more Catholic version of this book. Because I'm Catholic, I have it practically written and ready to go. I just need to have somebody publish that. So it would be with a little bit more of a Christian
Mm-hmm.
anthropology and theology in it.
All right. Sounds good. So that's what's next, Elizabeth. And you had mentioned like in the next couple of years wanting this book to be added on. Are you thinking there's going to be updated versions of the guide? Is that what you were alluding to?
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it'll all look, but I think it would be awesome. And, this is something we could ask you about, Carrie, since you're one of the first ones, I think, to do a big book um, kind of thing with it, is to have a study guide
Yes, a study guide would be
with
great.
questions.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, would love that. Um, right now, everything that we've done with the book club has been within our app. But I think I'm going to go ahead and put them on our website as well so that they can get more access. But at that point, then you can see, yeah, the questions that we were asking as we were going through. But yeah, I would love to help in making that study guide with you. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jennifer says, awesome.
Mhm.
Sounds good. Yeah. And those of you who went through the book study, especially Patricia and Jennifer, you guys were really involved. We'd love to hear your feedback on how it went. Where I'm thinking about doing another book club through Leah's book of the holistic feminism. There will be a ton of conversation in there too. Um, that you call it a guide because it truly is read as a guide. It's something you can go back to the certain topics and get the information that you need when you need it. And so, yeah, again, just well done, Teresa. I'm so happy that this book is finally available to the public. And I'm sure that once it gets on Amazon, it's going to go nuts. And it'll be great because then you will get the criticism and we can get into those real tough conversations and it's going to be
Yeah.
awesome. And hopefully we'll have enough of your tribe that's already read it to be able to answer on your behalf and
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
this
I
is
would love
good
that.
stuff.
I'll need all your support.
Yes. I was thankful last spring to meet Megan as well, who was a contributor to the book. And I actually hadn't realized that she was a contributor. The book hadn't been published yet, but she had mentioned it. I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And so we did the cycle show at her school there in
Oh,
Omaha.
yeah.
And it was wonderful to know her. So then as I was reading her contribution, I was like, oh, wow, like I know who this person is. And it was so well written too. What she wrote about unexpected pregnancies and mothers not understanding their identity. I thought that was just really a neat concept that a lot of us really need to think about. And it was a
Hmm.
really neat challenge to give to those who support their friends who are dealing with an unplanned pregnancy and realizing. I loved what she said about treating that woman the same way as before you had that information because she is the same woman and she hasn't
Hmm.
caught up yet in her mind of what's happening and how her new identity has now changed. I
Yeah.
think that's really great, and that's something that I think all of us need to hear, whether we're pro-life or pro-choice or in the gray, right?
100%. Yeah. Thanks to Megan Drappa. She pushed me to write this book, basically.
Mm.
So it wouldn't have happened without her. And she works for a great organization called the Vitae Foundation,
Mm-hmm.
and they helped, really make this book happen. So
Yeah.
huge deal.
Oh, so thankful for all the collaboration that came into it, for sure. Wonderful. Well, it doesn't look like there's any other extra questions here, so I won't take your whole evening on a Thursday night. But Teresa, thank you so much for being with us tonight. It was just a joy to go through, and we're just honored to have a few moments of your time tonight. So we so appreciate it. And if there are more comments that come in and more questions as we go along, I know how to contact you, so I'll get those to you. And yeah, let us know when you're ready to get together for that study guide. And I'm sure the women that were in part of this book club would love to contribute their questions and thoughts too.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. And thanks, Carrie, for hosting this. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Teresa, for everything that you do, and blessings to you in all of your work.
Thanks.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.